and leaders of our church as we journey through topics that inform, engage, and inspire the daily life of our church.
Hello and welcome to the Roundtable from Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church in Little Rock. My name is Jay Clark and I'm one of the pastors on staff here. I serve in the role of executive pastor. Today we have our family ministries team and they're all going to introduce themselves, and then we'll get, this is the third in a three-part series of the Roundtable focusing on family ministry. So if you'll introduce yourself and what you do, that would be great.
I'm Pam Lentz. I'm minister to children and families here at Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church.
My name is Rowland, and I am the minister to youth and families at Pulaski Heights.
I'm Hocott, and I'm the director of mid-youth ministry here at Pulaski Heights.
So the first week we kind of talked in general about family ministries, some shifts that we're seeing in our church, purposeful shifting. And then last week we talked about research and how important that is to our ministry areas. Today we're going to kind of talk about how children's and youth ministry is today. And we've alluded to this in the past 2 weeks of conversation. But we hear a lot about young people leaving the church. And Ellen, you said something about this in the first episode. But how do we keep that from happening? Well, that's all we have today. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because, I mean, the old joke is that, you know, we have this programming and we make them think about their faith, then they go to college and they leave the church, and then if they get married and have children, then they come back to the church. That's the old thinking of, you know, that's why we have this lost space. It's not so much like that anymore, I don't think.
In children's ministries, we had begun to see a falling off of attendance. It's not just COVID. It was pre-COVID. We began to see that children and families were moving differently. There's a lot going on. There's so much more to do on the weekends, and we were beginning to see our families pulled away. It wasn't that they didn't consider themselves members by any means, but their participation was shifting. And we recognized too that the opportunity to compete, the church was competing with other things. So in my ministry and the folks I've been able to work with, one of the things we've been very intentional about is how do we meet families where they are. If they can't be here every Sunday, then how do we create a program that allows them to participate and still be members without feeling guilty when they're not here? So that is something that we really are working on, is providing things, especially Sunday school. It's broader. If you miss Sunday, then you don't miss Moses for a whole year. We found ways to try to make those stories last longer, to spend more time so that families can kind of come and go and still get the basics that we want their children to experience while they're here.
I think at least in my area for 8th through 12th grade, we're doing two things a little differently. One is that instead of telling your child what to believe, we are very, very invested in helping your child learn to think for themselves and think about faith questions for themselves, and to understand that the best part of faith is the stuff you don't really know a clear answer to. And so kids, instead of getting a lot of this is how faith is and you buy into this and now you're in it forever, we now are teaching kids that this is a lifelong journey in which you are asking questions and continuing to grow. The other thing is we're telling a better story about what should happen to you when you get out of youth ministry. Because we used to say, well, it's just normal for you to not go to church and not care about God and give up on your faith in college, and that you will magically come back to this commitment when you're an adult. And at one point, maybe that did happen. We now have whole generations of people that said, I filled my life with other things that are meaningful to me. And I did that while I was in college and while I was a young adult. And by the time that I had my own kids, I got double busy and I'm not into this. And so we are working really hard in our ministry right now to start saying, at any major university, there is a Wesley House for you. That you can continue this in a different format that fits your lifestyle, but that your faith should never just stop. It's a lifelong pursuit. So we are working hard to do lots of teaching on this end, and to start telling a better story about young people in the church, because it's not just that we don't care, it's that young people are out there, and they need a better space and a better story.
One thing we're doing in middle school youth or mid-youth is we're letting the kids know that we know they have a life outside the church. It's not just here. We want them to be here, but we also want to be where they are. So if they will let us know, or their parents will let us know when they have a ball game or a recital or anything that we can attend, we want them to let us know. I will be there. I will write notes to your kids when they're off at camp. I will do whatever it takes, but I want you to know that although I think this is an important place to be, we know that you don't have to be here every week. And so I think that's one thing that we can do, and that's kind of an outreach thing as well. But it's also one of those things that hopefully when kids grow up, they say, well, the church understands where I'm coming from, not only when I'm sitting in the pew, but when I'm off over here playing a game or when I'm in my business, whatever.
You mentioned about the Wesley House, but there's also places of worship, because not every university, even if they have a Wesley House,
Right.
it's not
always your cup of tea.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
You know, and I think bishops and cabinets across the connection have come a long way in who they appoint or hire to be at Wesley Foundations, Wesley Houses, because used to it was an afterthought, and they would get stuck with someone. Not always, but you know, and I think they're doing a better job at that. So,
Yeah,
you know,
great.
if people have heard bad things about Wesley Foundation, they should give it a shot just to see what it's about.
Sure.
The one of the questions that that someone asked was, how has the pandemic affected children's and youth ministry? You know, and I guess, and I'm guessing any program area of the church, but you know, especially these areas, it's tricky.
Well, certainly children's ministries was greatly affected because of the inability to get shots and the mask updates that are constant. And so we started and stopped and started again, and families grew fearful, and so we had to do ministry in a different way. But that also affects people's ability to come back, because there was a huge gap of time. We have children who've missed 2 years of Christian round-the-calendar events. And interesting, kind of a funny story, I had a child who came to Sunday school and clearly, you know, hadn't been able to come for 2 years, and we are seeing lots of families return for the first time in quite a while. And she was enjoying Sunday school, but she said, how long has this camp been going on? And I recognized that she didn't understand Sunday school. She hadn't had the opportunity to come for 2 years, and so for her it was like a camp that she'd recently attended. And so a reality check for me is we've got a lot of work to do to help these kids remember what it's like to be in a church community. And I do think community building is across the age levels. If parents have been gone for 2 years, their friend groups have shifted, the places your children are participating are new, and all of that affects the way we feel when we show up on a Sunday morning. So we feel very intentional about making sure that adults get plugged in just as much as children do, so the whole family is engaged while they're here on a Sunday morning especially.
Well, I'm technologically challenged. So when we tried to do Zoom mid-youth when everybody was out, it just didn't work. I don't do well. But anyway, besides that, we finally decided that we built the mid-youth group up to about 35 or 40 kids, and then COVID hit, and we tried the Zoom thing, and it didn't work. And so we got to a place where we thought, okay, maybe with masks we can come back, and we did. And we started off with about 18 kids, and could not take your mask off or anything. We didn't eat. We socially distanced. We did all the stuff. But ours was the one program that continued. Mid-youth was the one program that continued through that as an on-site program. And kids hated the masks. We all did. But at some point we got past that. And so we're seeing better things now, I just am thankful that the church kept going. The church never stops, and that's one thing I think that we also need to push on. The church is always here. We are the church, so we're going to be here.
Yeah, and you and I realized that it's really hard to hear without seeing lips move.
That's exactly right.
When the kids couldn't take down their masks, Rod and I would be like, "What are you saying?"
For Rod and I in this youth ministry, we got so lucky. I think we have one of the best bounce backs from COVID in the entire state. Yeah. We're seeing probably somewhere between 120 and 140 students, now including our extended into 5th grade programming. But it's really because we started to focus on what can you only get at church. And I think this was cloudy for a long time, to say, well, youth ministry needs to be big and fun and all these other things. But when it comes down to it, when kids have a lot of different choices, you can go and do big fun things with your soccer team or the YMCA or anything else. What you do with us is have intentional relationships and friendships that you build for your whole lifetime. That you ask the important questions that came up for you during COVID. A lot of people started to think more about their faith, and teenagers are included in that. Mm-hmm. And I think all of us are seeing that, and everyone out there is seeing that period of time was a huge trauma for people. And youth experienced horrible mental health. Youth are extremely socially behind in some cases. And so we are constantly adjusting our ministry for things that are unexpected like that. That a 10th grader might not be the same kind of 10th grader that we were looking at before COVID. And if you miss 2 years of church, you're missing 2 years of critical discipleship education. And so we are doing things like normally one age group would go to a certain event, and we're saying, you know what, the older kids that missed it, they need to go. So we're expanding those things for the next couple years to make sure that everyone gets very critical parts of what it means to be a United Methodist, including our conference events and how to do Bible study, how to engage in youth and missions in a way like staying overnight. There were some kids, even in high school, that this was their first week away from their parents, was an OMP trip with us. So those things are very profound, and we're thinking about those things when we're designing our next year and our next summer.
How is volunteerism?
A slow start, but we are starting to see people come back, and they're asking questions, and they're looking for ways. They're not in the routine of looking for those things because everything fell away. And so creating those opportunities for people to know what's available, which we are doing right now, and we are working hard to pull people back in and help them recognize the places that they can serve. It's slow, but it's slowly picking up.
Do you have something that's the greatest need right now from adults?
Always Sunday school. Sunday school is always a place, and we've tried to make it so that it doesn't require a lot of preparation and a lot of extra. We really need people to come and be and spend 50 minutes, 40 minutes with children and just be in community right now. They need to just be together and get to know each other again. That's the most important thing.
What about volunteers in mid-youth and youth?
Well, Sunday school, of course, we're going to have 3 classes this year, 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade. And 7th grade, we're going to use 7th grade as a confirmation year, but we already confirmed the 6th graders, so they'll be in their own 7th grade class. So we won't have a confirmation class this year unless Ellen decides that some of the kids who miss confirmation need to have a class, and then we can do that. But we need teachers, and I want them to understand that we don't need you every week. You know, we can use you for 2 or 3 times, and then you can have a break, and then we'll get someone else. So we'll be talking to parents about that and other people. But mid-youth, we have volunteers, we have adults, but we're also going to try something new this year. We know that some of our youth are called to ministry. And so we're going to allow them to work with our mid-youth, if they're in the age-appropriate range, to work with our mid-youth so that they can get a taste of that, but also so that our mid-youth can see how those kids are working, how they're growing in their faith, how something they have to look forward to. So I'm excited about that. And so Sunday school teachers, we need you.
Yeah. We are really working on making sure that we have an appropriate ratio of adults to students. That's what turns a 70-person Sunday night. We had 71 students on Sunday night. That's what turns that from crazy pants to an organized, happy church event.
Organized chaos.
Organized chaos, not just chaos. And so, I've seen a really interesting shift, too, about people's priorities, which I think did happen over the pandemic. It used to be that I would say, hey, I need pizza. And I would have pizza land on my doorstep, before I even took my next breath. But then I would say, hey, I need you to be in relationship with students intentionally for an entire year as a small group leader. And of course, people were like, I don't know if that's for me. And after COVID, I've seen the reverse, that people want to be invested in what we're doing. What we are putting together is extremely exciting, and they want to be in relationship with students. My Sunday night team right now is 21 adults, which is an incredible thing. But then we have things like we need food, or I need someone to drive kids to an event, or something like that. And those things are a lot harder to find because I think they're not as meaningful in the same way, but they're still just as needed. If a youth ministry does not have food, I don't know if it's still a youth ministry the same way.
True.
When I first started in ministry, I was visiting with this youth minister from Pennsylvania. Valley Forge, I think, is where her church was. And she'd been there. She was like the Rod Hocott of that conference. She'd
It's a thing.
Everyone knew her. Or the June Wilson, from South Carolina. But I'll never forget, she had a program that was just going great for so many years. And one of us newbies said, well, what's the secret? And her answer was, just love them.
That's right.
And there's a lot around that. But the bottom line, when other adults think they're not trained or don't have the research or whatever, it's just about relationships.
Bottom line, yes.
It's about that if someone can't connect with any of us, it may be, Sally's mom, who is a small group leader or a Sunday school teacher, that they connect with and develop a relationship that's very special that lasts a lifetime. So, yeah,
and I think that's important because many of us, all of us maybe, I can remember people. I don't remember Sunday school lessons,
No.
but I will remember who taught it to me, and I will remember how they taught it. So people and relationships are the important part of what we do. I think every one of us have said that at one point in this all 3 episodes.
And all of our volunteers are background checked and part of a network of safe gatherings that we check on, and all of our staff have been checked as well. So that's an important part, an important piece of what we do to keep our young people safe.
Yeah, we've been hired as the experts and the researchers and the curriculum writers, but you can't hire someone that every single teenager thinks is cool. And I get really close, but I need my adults. And I think people come in feeling like they have to have all the answers, and the truth is really what Jay says, that if you can love young people, if you have the capacity to listen and love young people, you're the perfect volunteer.
And we need you.
Yeah. Before we sign off, what are you most looking forward to this school year in your ministry areas? And we'll start with Rod.
Well, of course, this is a whole new paradigm for us, 5th through 7th grade, and I'm excited because I think that it's going to be big, it's going to be exciting. But parents have to know, just like Pam said earlier, kids can't get here without parents, so parents have to sign on as well. And so that's an exciting thing for me, is to see what this is all going to turn out to be. I'm very excited about that.
Ellen?
My leadership team this year, I have a leadership team of students that guide, preach, write, think through every event, and the team this year is so exciting to me. It's full of young people that I think will grow up to be in ministry, and kids that are really, really intentional about the culture that we're building, which is normally not on kids' radar. And so it's an exciting year to be here and be with these students.
And we also have kids that, young people, youth, that are reaching out from this congregation and part of the district council on youth ministries and the conference council on youth ministries, and helping plan events for not only, people from our church, but also for the whole state. So.
And we're doing more with our district and with our conference this year than we have since COVID. So we're thrilled about that.
Pam?
I am really excited about having a calendar year of all those Christian celebrations that we have not been able to do in the ways that we know they're important to children and families. So we are planning for all those traditional events in ways that we can celebrate being together. So.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
I used to tell confirmation parents when young people would join the church that make no mistake about it. We can do all we want here, all we can do here, but without the parents, then their kids are going to model what their
Exactly.
relationship
Absolutely.
with the church is.
Yes.
And so that's important to remember. So anyway, thanks for joining us at the Roundtable from Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church. And we'll see you next week for a whole new series that I don't even know what it is because it's kept under lock and key. So tune in and join us next week. Have a great week, everyone.